I have spent 1,000 hours between only 4 garments, and the last of which took over half of those hours. So what are the 10 things that I have learned in that process? It rained last night. You might be seeing the raindrops fall from the trees. It's not currently raining, and hopefully it doesn't start. My hair might become just more of a poof ball because of all the humidity in the air. I am outside since it's Henry camp right now, and Henry's inside watching his Disney clubhouse. So hopefully the noise of the road doesn't, hopefully we can still make it work in this situation, because I gotta tell you what are the 10 things I have learned spending over 1,000 hours on this one technique. First of all, it starts by showing up. And there's a couple of things that you can go with here. Once you show up, you'll see that it's easier. It's often easier than you think. And you don't know that. You don't know that until you just show up, right? But also you'll find motivation through beginning. So say you're just like, okay, you want to sew something, you want to, anything, pick a domain, okay? You want to do something, but you're not exactly sure what you want to sew or what you want to do. Well, show up. A lot of trucks going out here today. It's Monday, people are getting to it. So you might find a button that is so inspiring. I've said this so many times, a button, I mean, it can do an entire garment, which can do an entire collection, and it starts by showing up and be like, oh man, that button inspired me to do this. Or you show up and you forgot that you had this pattern, and now that you have that pattern, well, now the pattern is helping you along to know what to do. So you've got to first show up. But also, how many discoveries have been made by accident, right? Somebody showed up, they weren't sure what they're trying to solve something. I'm thinking more in the domain of science, but it happens all over the place. But somebody shows up, and how many really important discoveries, I think penicillin was one, if I'm not mistaken. But how many really important scientific discoveries have just happened on accident because somebody was showing up, chipping at the old stone, right? They thought they were going in one direction to solve the issue. They made what they thought was a mistake, and there you go. The solution just kind of fell out of their quote mistake, and they got it because they showed up. Technique is a small fraction of the project. Most of the project comes from lots of reps. And within those reps, the technique will tighten up and get better bit by bit. And really, I think this, it helps with not being overwhelmed, right? It's not about learning all the techniques all at once in order to do a garment. Excuse me. Especially if you talk about a garment that is really special, because okay, well, first of all, you got to start somewhere. So sure, you're going to start with garments that are more simple and work your way up and work your way up and work your way up. But also when you get to when you want to check off a little bit more, now that you've done the simple garments, well, now you've gotten, let me get that truck go by. There's a lot of trucks. There's a lot of people getting to it. I love it. So now, if you want to do a garment that is more complex in those techniques, learning the actual technique is a little bit of it. Then you got to do lots and lots of reps, which in my mind keeps things from becoming overwhelming, because it's not about learning all the things all at once. It's just about piling on the reps. And bit by bit, your technique will become better. Your setup is just as important, if not more as important. Oh, got a bug scratching. I'm biting my ankle. And another truck. Oh, yeah. But your setup is just as important, if not more as important, as your skill or technique level. And when I say your setup, I mean your workspace as well as you. Your body, you are part of your setup, your health. So it's really important. I mean, selfishly, don't you want to just feel good, right? Why are people eating themselves into a grave? Why? I know I'm smirking a smile right here when I say that, but it's sad. And I think I'm smirking a smile so I don't cry. Like, I wish I could help all those folks who are eating themselves into the grave, because it's just sad. And I'm so sorry, this is so close, but I wanted to interject something as I'm editing this. It is never too late. So if you've had a lifetime of eating poorly, and you thought, even if you thought you were eating healthy, all of this new information is coming out about sugar and all the dangers and all the things, and the whole 80-20%, 80% of the time eat quote healthy stuff and 20% it's okay. And even some dietitians and nutritionists are still claiming that rule. The new information, it's clear. The 80-20 is not good. A ton of sugar is not good. So even if you thought you were eating healthy, but this new information is clear that that's not the way to do it, it's never too late. That's what I'm trying to say. Even if you've had 40 years of legit junk food, all the soda and the donuts and all the things, it's never too late. The body is an incredibly adaptable machine. So if I was in that position, if I was, 60, 70 years old and thinking, well, I've already eaten this way for however many years, what's the point? If I were in those shoes, I would thank my body for keeping me alive under those conditions, truly, not going into a coma, not all those sort of things, and handling what I had been giving it, which was, a bit, our cars would have been kaput on the side of the road, right? I would thank my body, and then I would do better. When you know better, do better. All of that Maya Angelou quote that I love to live by. Just do better, and you will see the incredible adaptable abilities of your body. You deserve it. I wish better for them, and I know that they are capable of better, and they've gotten trapped and succumbed by all the addictions and all the things that are just not wholesome and pure. And so, yes, your workspace is really important, and having the structure and just the support, but also of your life. So with my kiddos, with the first garment, I was at home with baby Henry and toddler Audrey, and I was doing all by myself, me, myself, and I. It was before I learned about the meal prep, and I've gone through several iterations of meal prep, thinking okay, this is the simple way to do it, and then I get it to another level of simple, and I think I finally arrived at a level that I'm not sure I can make it any more simple. It just happens in the background. There's no spending a day on Sunday, a half a day on Sunday. It just happens in the background. It's kind of just like, I'm thirsty, so I'm gonna take a drink. It's just like, oh, I just need a little up on meal prep. Let me just soak some more beans and put them in a pressure cooker. It's no time at all. It's no thought at all. It's as simple, I think, as I can get. It's frozen veggies. Don't have to wash them. Don't have to cut them. Don't have to. It's simple. It's simple. It's collards out of the bag. They're already pre-washed, already cut. It's just simple, simple, simple. Anywho, so all of those setups. It's having the workspace set up, it's having your health set up, but it's also having your logistics of your life, whether that's be childcare, whether that's, your meal prep, whether that's layering in your exercise, where you find time for that. Definitely sleep. Sleep is the big guy. All of these three pale in comparison to sleep. And I was not getting sleep back when I was doing Audrey's dress of this. Audrey's version of this. Audrey's dress. Let me just try to speak English. The turtle wins the race. I love this saying. I know it's the tortoise, but the turtle just has a little. There's more rain. The turtle just has a little spark to it. I think turtles are really, really cute. So at any rate, healthy, sustainable progress often goes unnoticed day to day. But when you look back a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year or more, right? That's when you'll see the progress that's been made. So don't worry that yesterday looks like today and tomorrow is going to look like today and all of those things. Progress is going to be made bit by bit by bit. It's often going to go, at least when we talk about sustainable, I think that's Gordon. Any rate, often progress goes unnoticed day to day. And so don't worry that you think that you're not making progress, that you think the technique is stalled or you're learning or whatever. That's actually a good thing. Keep plugging at it. And that's when you know you're in the zone of, I mean, you're not bored, right? You're just maybe a little worried if you're on the right track or not. And that's okay. Like, that's okay. I've been like that with French. I keep listening to French and I'm like, oh, okay. You know, I can say like basic stuff. I can kind of muscle my way through. And then they get to talking and I'm like, it all sounds the same. And that word sounds like this word and that. And part of that is just, it's French.
Vert, vert, vert ou vert?
Because half of the language sounds like the other half of the language because it's French.
Vert, vert, vert ou vert?
Italian is not, it doesn't quite have that issue. But at any rate, so everything is finite. So even if there's something like 100,000 stitches, 150,000 stitches, which honestly there might be around in the neighborhood of 150,000 or so, maybe even 200,000 stitches, they add up in a hurry. I've got 10,000 objects, although I didn't digitize the basket, so that didn't count. And then I added more to the swirl, which wasn't on there. And each one of those objects easily has 10 stitches, it's not 12 or 15 in them. So it adds up in a hurry. But even just like crazy amount, even if it's 200,000 stitches, it's still just 200,000 stitches. And so if you were gonna spend 3 hours of your afternoon, like if you're gonna spend this afternoon sewing, well, you could spend the afternoon sewing something on the more simple side, which there's nothing wrong with. Or you could just look at it as, I'm going to spend this afternoon sewing and that afternoon sewing, and instead of having 2 garments, I'm going to just continue on one project, and I'm just going to continue and continue and continue. And 6 months from now, I'll have 1 garment. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with simple. It's simple, like simple garments. I'm going to be making a bunch of simple dresses for Daisy as she goes into pre-K at the elementary school. We'll sit down together and we'll do the simple things. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a little bit of a different frame of mind of, well, you were going to sew anything anyways. It's all finite. It will add up and it will get done, whether that's 1 afternoon or 6 months. And more on that note, it really is the little things that add up. I mean, all the little stitches, right, add up to this design. So there's, on the big scale, all these 200,000 or 150,000, however many stitches there are, add up on the big scale of what we're seeing. It made this big design. But if you zoom in into each little, on the small scale, if you zoom in and see each little object, had I made my stitches bigger, each little object wouldn't have been as fluid. So the circle wouldn't, or oval or whatever, wouldn't have been as nice of a fluid oval. It would have been more of a chunky kind of a rectangle, in the mix of an oval. And over time, over 100,000 objects, that really would have added up to a design. Hey, Larry, that really would have added up to a design that wouldn't have been as fluid. It wouldn't have been as nice. So emotions come in waves. So things like boredom will pass. Also happiness will pass. But also, I know a lot of people talk about emotions in waves, but really I think if you look a little bit deeper into emotions, they can be navigational tools. So sure, the boredom will pass, but also what is the boredom telling you? Maybe it's that you've digested already what you've bitten off, right? Maybe you're hungry for a little more. That's your logger truck. Maybe you're just hungry for a little more, and that's a good thing. So maybe boredom popping up, maybe you should think about, how can I layer in this situation? When I was doing Audrey's, not getting sleep, baby Henry, toddler Audrey, trying to figure out how to get this thing done, I was not bored. I was trying to figure out how to get it done while watching them, while sticking up with the housework. Back then, I did not do meal prep. I was doing all of the meals. Didn't have grocery pickup, having to go to the grocery store. Can you imagine? The physical grocery store, strapped to me, baby Henry, had toddler Audrey, and I tell you, that child, I would put her on the potty before we left. She was well potty trained at this point. But I would put her on and I would squeeze her little belly, try to get every last drop of urine out of her, right? And sure enough, and I'm in the grocery store and it was like an exercise. I mean, I left the grocery store in a sweat, okay? And I would go through there and the big old Walmart cart, which are massive, and I would pile in food and pile because I tried to make the grocery runs last at least a week, if not 10 days. That was like my goal. 2 weeks was like, oh my gosh, I am killing it. But I would pile all the food in race through that store like a mad woman, try to make sure that Henry was still asleep because he was not an easy baby. And then there would be the little, Mama, I have to pee. And of course, it's like, you got the big shopping cart. There's more rain. You got the big shopping cart, right? Full of food. You've got the baby who hopefully is asleep. And now you got this toddler who she loved peeing. And for some reason, maybe she saw the face. Maybe it was just because I didn't want to do it. It was like her little glimmer, like her little joy. I don't know. But then I'd have to pick her up out of the thing, hopefully not wake him up, put her on the thing. And, you know, public bathrooms with toddlers, it's like I try to avoid them because they're often not clean. Anywho, where was I? Oh, I wasn't bored. Point being is I wasn't bored. When I got to Daisy's, I was still kind of in the podcast land of things of longevity, but then I had started to kind of hear the repeat and like the common themes, and it was kind of like, okay, I'm just kind of, man, something is biting my ankle. I'm just kind of getting, I got the gist of this, you know? If we're in the weeds you can get in the weeds along longevity space, and then you can get really anxious, at least for me, because then it's like, well, what do you do if everyone's saying contradictory things? But I kind of got a little bored of all of it. I kind of got the highlights, I felt like. So what did I do? I switched to my language. I was able to do more of my languages. I had already returned to studying French at that point. And so I just threw on more French, and I threw on more French and more French and more French. And you know what? I actually talked to a guy in France.
Bonjour, tu m'entends? Can you hear me?
Je m'appelle Sarah, habitons dans la mountains, Montagne, aux États-Unis. J'ai 4 enfants. Done. Fini. Qu'est-ce que vous allez aujourd'hui?
What I will doing today? For the moment, I try to speak English. Que faites-vous sitôt levé?
Je me réveille, je vais au bureau, mon travail. Je travaille dans l'ordinateur pour 2-3 heures. Et puis, les enfants sont à l'école.
Les enfants sont à l'école, ouais.
Je dors l'école. Am I saying that right? École.
Bonjour. Bien, et toi?
Le vendredi, ça va toujours bien.
Qu'est-ce que vous faites sur le week-end?
Alors, demain matin, je vais courir.
Bonjour, how are you? Ça va? Bien.
Bien.
Bon, il fait chaud. Ce week-end, nous passons le temps à la ferme. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Ferme.
La ferme.
À la ferme.
C'est nous sommes allés.
Nous sommes allés à la ferme. Et puis, nous nageons, to swim.
Vous avez nagé?
Nager. Hello, bonjour. Qu'est-ce que tu fais ce matin?
J'ai pris mon petit déjeuner. J'étais en train de regarder mon agenda pour la journée.
Bonjour. Samedi était festival d'art pour les enfants. Beaucoup de personnes boivent des bières.
Boire un verre, voilà.
De bière et de vin. De vin? Non.
De la bière ou du vin, oui.
Oui.
Généralement, après avoir couru, c'est plutôt de la bière que le vin.
Je ne suis pas allée au hôpital. Donc hier est très bonne.
Donc, hier, bonne journée.
Bonne journée. Didn't go to the hospital. Benefits of waking up so early. I caught him before he went off to work, and we had some conversations. And his English was better than my French, but he could, one, understand what I was saying, I could maybe 10% understand what he was saying, but the little bit of English, what really was the motivator in that thing is that his English wasn't great, but I saw what little English he had and how much he was able to communicate. So then it was like, well, let's reverse that. Let me learn all the bits that you've learned in English, and then I'll be able to get better. You know what I mean? I'll be able to get better because like I said, he wasn't completely fluent. He was above being broken English, but it wasn't like he still had a ways to go. So then it was like, I can get to that pretty quick. So then I just listened to more and more and more French. And then I was like, you know what? Italian is pretty close to, it felt like I was starting to grasp a hold of French. And I thought, well, let me add Italian to the mix because they're pretty similar and it feels like it's on the table for the taking. And it's going to take a couple years. And in a couple years, I'm going to be glad that I started now. So I started listening to both of them through the stitching on Everly's dress. And, you know, no regrets, no boredom. Use your body to control your mind, or as Nike brilliantly put it, just do it. Just do it. I love that quote. Motivation and inspiration arrive after discipline. So you discipline yourself, you walk into your sewing space, and that's what I'm talking about when I say physically move, like you use your body to control your mind. Say you're not in the mood to do it, whatever, even if you've gotten a crappy night's sleep, which I understand, but we can kind of muscle our way through a crappy night's sleep. It's not ideal. It does happen. It's better to get, it's better to respect your sleep. But even if you do all the things that you think you're doing correct, like you do all the things to get sleep, it sometimes just doesn't happen, at least in my experience. And even so, we can still get up, we can still put one foot in front of the other. We do not need to drink 10 cups of coffee. And maybe we're a little bit, downshifted from what we would have been had we gotten a good night's sleep. But alas, we can still move the car forward a little bit, right? So, someone's weed whacking. I really hope that's not picking up in the audio. What was I saying? Oh, so use your body. How does that look? It's physically like it's making your bed. It's physically walking into your sewing space. It's having the cup of green tea. It's staying hydrated. It's physically doing those things. It's physically turning on your iron or whatever. That's another big truck. Or whatever those things are that you're trying to get done. Turning on your computer, opening the document, starting the typing, and then your inspiration, your motivation, it'll just start kind of going. Like as the wheels slowly start to turn, that's when the momentum builds up. And think about it. Think about a semi or a train or anything massive, right? How much effort it takes. I mean, those poor semis, they go through 8 gears before they get to, 40 miles an hour or something? It's pretty crazy. But how hard is it to stop a semi when all that momentum is built up because there's all that force behind it, right? There's so much mass behind it. How hard is it to stop a train? You can't. You can't just stop a train on a dime or a semi on a dime or an airplane or anything massive. It takes a long time to get it going, and then you can't just slammer though, which is kind of the nice thing. So, perfection is not the point. It never was the point. And it's better to try to do something than get paralyzed by the idea of not being able to obtain perfection. Also, perfection is fairly boring to look at. I mean, even haute couture, and as amazingly immaculate and inspiring as it is, you can tell that a human was there. Dare I say, it's not perfect. Now, yes, it's sewing at the highest level by definition. Haute couture is how it translates, high sewing. But even sewing at the highest level, like you can see that a person was there. If it was truly like a machine made, and we're getting into the weeds now because what is perfection? What lens are you viewing that through? What is your tolerance for error? What is your tolerance for being able to measure? I mean, all of these things, right? We're really getting into the weeds here. But if we stay higher up, if we don't zoom into like every fiber, okay, every single stitch, if we stay a little bit zoomed out, like perfection's kind of boring to look at. Yes, we want pretty. Yes, we want as best we can do. We want, precision. Yes, we want to strive for our best, but we still want to show that at least in my opinion, my 2 cents, whatever they're worth, you still want to have I can barely speak English. Authenticity, that's how you say it. You still want, at least in my opinion, you still want it to be, a person was here, right? Not a machine, a person was here. Furthermore, this is not a problem. Often our minds run away with themselves. And really, is this an issue? When you're looking at your work and you're thinking you messed it up, okay? Maybe you're nitpicking your stitches, okay? Can your stitches get better? Well, then make them better. Maya Angelou's, right? As you know better, or as you know more, do better. Like, oh, I'm butchering that quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. But as you know better, as you do the rain and the trees, or the water is falling down. Anywho, you get what I'm trying to say. But really isn't an issue. So if you can do better, then do better. But often, you just gotta keep going. And more often than not, when I start a project, I'm like, maybe I'm not so fond of the design or how my stitches are looking, and I just keep going. And you know what? I just needed to keep, that was the only thing. It wasn't that my flower was bad, it just needed some leaves, okay? It's amazing what leaves will do every time. You can do an amazing bullion rose, and the bullion is a stitch where it takes a little bit to master the bullion, but then you get you a lazy daisy leaf on side, which is so easy to do. The name says it, right? Lazy daisy. And it just makes the whole bullion pop. I don't know. Think about a house. You build the entire house, you do the whole sheetrock, which is a whole skill in itself, doing the sheetrock and the drywall and getting it's a pain in the butt. And then you put paint up. My gosh, or trim. Like, it's so easy. The easy things often make the hard stuff pop, right? So just keep going. But even if there is an issue, like in the case of Audrey's hem, it gives you something to work on, which is great, because after all, having something wholesome to work on, it's a great use of your time. It occupies yourself. I mean, what are you supposed to do with your time? One, we're not born, nobody's born knowing all of this. Maybe some folks are prodigies, which those are a dime and a dozen by definition, right? But the regular, like the rest of us non-prodigy folks, we're not born not knowing any of this, and it's just, I don't think there's anything innate in me. Like, I'm not crazy talented. I'm not crazy smart. I'm not crazy artistic wise. I'm not crazy creative wise. So many things that are not, it's a muscle that I've used. It's a muscle that I've used over and over and over and over. Oh, that is Gordon. It's a muscle that I've used over and over and over again. And in the beginning, designing my own stuff I would just kind of stall in the middle of the road. But as you figure out how to get those gears, how to get into gear, then you can do it more easily, and you can get into larger gears, and you can do them faster. And some folks can skip a gear, which is kind of interesting. I've never tried it, but I've heard of it. Morning, Gordon. How are you? Yeah. Doing good. Just talking to a camera. Doing good. So it's a muscle like anything else. And if I can do it, you can do it. Those are the 10 lessons that I've learned with 1,000 hours plus behind me.